The great hall of the Galactic Council chamber stretched beyond sight, its crystal walls reflecting the light of 1,000 star systems. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their designated sections, their varied forms creating a sea of colors and shapes that would have amazed any human visitor. But today, there was no wonder in the air. Only judgment. King Zephan of the Kalthari Empire stood in the center of the chamber, his once proud figure now hunched with desperation. His silver skin had lost its natural glow, and the ceremonial crown that marked his royal status felt heavier than any burden he had ever carried. Around him, holographic displays showed the evidence of his crimes: burning planets, enslaved populations, and the systematic destruction of 3 peaceful civilizations. "The evidence is clear," announced Council Speaker Vorth, her tentacled form swaying as she spoke. "King Zephan of the Kalthari has committed acts of war against innocent worlds. The penalty for such crimes is death by plasma dissolution." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Even among the diverse species present, the Kalthari were known for their psychic powers and military might. To see their king brought so low was both satisfying and terrifying to many who had suffered under his rule. Zephan raised his head, his 4 eyes scanning the chamber until they found the human delegation. They sat in a modest section, their simple appearance almost laughable compared to the grand forms of other species. Humans were still considered a minor race by most of the galaxy. They had no natural psychic abilities, no advanced biotechnology, and their military was small compared to the great empires. But Zephan knew something others did not. In his recent battles, it had been human tactics and human cunning that had finally cornered him. Their ambassador, a plain-looking man named Chen, had somehow convinced 12 different species to work together against the Kalthari Empire. No one had ever managed such a feat before. "I request the right of final words," Zephan called out, his voice echoing through the chamber. Speaker Vortha's expression showed displeasure, but galactic law was clear. "You have 1 minute to speak before the sentence is carried out." Zephan straightened his shoulders and looked directly at Ambassador Chen. "Honored representatives, I do not dispute my crimes. I have done terrible things in the name of expanding my empire. But I wish to make an offer to prevent my bloodline from ending in shame." The chamber fell silent. Such appeals were not uncommon, but they rarely changed anything. "To the human delegation, I offer a gift as payment for my life," Zephan continued. "I present to you my daughter, Princess Nira, as a token of peace between our species." A wave of shocked whispers filled the chamber. Gift-giving between species was an ancient tradition, but offering one's own child was almost unheard of in modern times. Ambassador Chen stood slowly from his seat. He was a small man by human standards, with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen too much war. "King Zephan, I must ask for clarification. Are you offering your daughter as a hostage, a servant, or something else?" Zephan's expression hardened. "I offer her as whatever you choose to make of her. She is of no use to my people. Take her, and grant me the mercy of exile instead of death." The cruel honesty in his words made several delegates shift uncomfortably. Chen studied the king's face for a long moment. "May I ask why you consider your own daughter to be of no use?" "She is defective," Zephan replied without emotion. "Born without the psychic gifts that define our noble bloodline. She cannot read minds, cannot move objects with thought, cannot even sense the emotions of others. In our society, she is less valuable than our lowest servants, for at least they can perform useful labor." Chen felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard of such attitudes among various alien species, but to hear a father speak so coldly about his own child was disturbing even by galactic standards. "She is 18 cycles old in human years," Zephan continued. "Old enough to serve whatever purpose you might have for her. I ask only that you consider this gift worthy of sparing my life." The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives debated among themselves in dozens of languages. Some found the offer insulting, others thought it might have value, and a few seemed genuinely disturbed by the casual way Zephan spoke of his daughter. Chen looked at his small delegation. Dr. Sarah Williams, their xenobiologist, had her tablet out and was rapidly taking notes. Captain Torres, their military advisor, looked skeptical about the entire situation. But it was Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, their cultural specialist, who caught his attention. She was staring at Zephan with barely concealed anger. "Ambassador," Maya whispered when Chen leaned closer, "we need to accept this offer." "Why?" Chen asked quietly. "Because if we don't, that girl will spend the rest of her life being treated like garbage by her own people," Maya replied. "Look at how he talks about her. She's not a gift to him, she's just something he wants to get rid of." Chen nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it confirmed by their cultural expert gave him confidence. He stood and addressed the chamber. "King Zephan, before I can accept such a generous offer, I must speak with your daughter directly. Is she present?" Zephan looked annoyed by the request. "She is being held in the detention area with the rest of my court. I can have her brought here if you insist." "I do insist," Chen replied firmly. 20 minutes later, the great doors of the chamber opened to admit a small group of guards escorting a young Kalthari female. Princess Nira was clearly her father's daughter, with the same silver skin and tall, slender build. But where Zephan carried himself with arrogant pride, Nira moved like someone who expected to be hurt at any moment. Her clothing was simple compared to the elaborate robes worn by other members of the Kalthari court. Her hair was shorter than the flowing styles favored by Kalthari nobility, and she kept her 4 eyes focused on the ground as she was led to stand beside her father. Chen studied her carefully. Even from a distance, he could see the tension in her shoulders and the way she flinched when Zephan moved suddenly. This was not the behavior of someone who had grown up feeling loved and valued. "Princess Nira," Chen called out, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Do you understand what your father has proposed?" Nira glanced up briefly, her eyes meeting Chen's for just a moment before looking away again. "Yes, Ambassador. He has offered to give me to your people in exchange for his life." Her voice was steady, but Chen caught the slight tremor in it. "And how do you feel about this arrangement?" The question seemed to surprise her. She looked at her father, then back at Chen. "How I feel is not important. I am his to give if he chooses." "I disagree," Chen said simply. "How you feel is very important to me and my people. If you could choose freely, what would you want?" For the first time, Nira raised her head fully and looked directly at the human delegation. There was something in her expression that reminded Chen of a caged animal seeing sunlight for the first time. "I would want to be somewhere where I am not considered broken," she said quietly. The admission sent another wave of murmurs through the chamber. King Zephan's face darkened with anger. "She speaks nonsense. She is what she is, and no amount of wishing will change it." Chen ignored the king and kept his attention on Nira. "Princess, if I were to accept your father's offer, you would be coming with us to human space. You would be under human protection and subject to human laws. Do you understand what that means?" Nira shook her head. "I know very little about human culture, Ambassador." "It means," Chen said slowly, "that you would be free to make your own choices about your life. No one would own you or command you without your consent. You would be judged by your actions and character, not by abilities you may or may not possess." The concept seemed so foreign to Nira that she struggled to process it. In Kalthari society, everything was determined by psychic ability. The strongest telepaths ruled, while those with lesser gifts served, and those with no gifts at all were considered barely better than animals. "I do not understand," Nira admitted. "If I have no useful abilities, how would I survive in your society?" Dr. Williams stood up from the human delegation. "Princess, may I ask what you enjoy doing? What interests you?" The question caught Nira off guard. No one had ever asked her such a thing before. "I like to read," she said hesitantly. "And I enjoy working with plants. I grow things in a small garden that no one else knows about." "Those are wonderful interests," Dr. Williams replied warmly. We have many people who make their living studying plants and helping them grow. Such work is highly valued in human society. Nira stared at the human doctor in amazement. The idea that her simple hobby could be considered valuable was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Chen turned back to address the chamber. Honored representatives, I have made my decision. On behalf of the human delegation, I formally accept King Zephin's gift of his daughter, Princess Nira. In exchange, we recommend that his sentence be commuted to permanent exile from Kalthari space. The chamber exploded into debate. Some representatives were outraged that humans would accept such an obvious attempt at manipulation. Others argued that the king's offer had been made in good faith and should be honored. A few wondered quietly what the humans planned to do with a powerless alien princess. Through it all, Chen kept his eyes on Nira. The young princess looked stunned, as if she couldn't quite believe what was happening. For the first time since entering the chamber, something like hope flickered in her expression. Speaker Vorth called for order and eventually managed to quiet the assembly. The human delegation has accepted the offered gift. We will now vote on whether to commute King Zephin's sentence. The voting process took nearly an hour, with representatives conferring among themselves and requesting clarifications on various points of galactic law. In the end, the motion passed by a narrow margin. King Zephin would live, but he would be stripped of his crown and exiled to a remote system where he could do no more harm. As the guards prepared to escort Zephin away, he turned to Chen one final time. I hope you find some use for her, Ambassador. She has been nothing but a disappointment to me. Chen's expression remained neutral, but his voice carried a hint of steel. King Zephin, I believe you have given us something far more valuable than you realize. Your loss will be our gain. After the former king was led away, Chen approached Princess Nira. She stood uncertainly, as if unsure whether she should run or collapse from exhaustion. Princess, Chen said gently, are you ready to begin a new life? Nira looked at him with wide eyes. I do not know what is expected of me. Nothing more than you're willing to give, Chen replied. Come with us, and we'll figure out the rest together. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Dr. Williams moved to walk beside Nira. Princess, I hope you don't mind me asking, but have you ever been tested for psychic abilities using human methods? Nira shook her head. Only Kalthari methods, which showed nothing. Interesting, Dr. Williams murmured, making a note on her tablet. Different species often have very different types of psychic gifts. What seems like an absence to one might simply be a variation that others can't detect. For the first time since the ordeal began, Nira allowed herself to smile. It was a small expression, barely visible, but it transformed her face entirely. As they walked toward the human transport, she felt something she had never experienced before, the possibility that her life might actually have value. Behind them, the great chamber slowly emptied as representatives returned to their ships and their own worlds. None of them yet realized that they had just witnessed the beginning of something extraordinary. The humans hadn't just accepted a cast-off princess, they had gained someone who would change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy and themselves. The human transport ship Unity was unlike anything Princess Nira had ever seen. Where Kalthari vessels were built to display power and intimidate enemies, this ship felt strangely welcoming. The corridors were wide and well-lit, with soft colors on the walls instead of the cold metal surfaces she was used to. As Dr. Williams led her through the ship, Nira noticed something remarkable, crew members of different species working side by side, talking and laughing together as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Your quarters are this way, Dr. Williams said, her voice gentle but not the careful politeness that Nira had grown used to hearing from servants who feared making mistakes. We've prepared a space that we hope you'll find comfortable, but please let us know if you need anything changed. Nira stopped walking. The idea that her comfort mattered enough to change things for her was so foreign that she couldn't process it immediately. I do not understand. Why would you change anything for me? Dr. Williams paused and turned to face her fully. Because you're a person, Nira. You have preferences and needs just like anyone else. We want you to be comfortable and happy here. But I am not useful to you, Nira replied, confusion clear in her voice. My father made that very clear. I have no gifts that could benefit your people. Your father was wrong about many things, Dr. Williams said firmly. We don't measure a person's worth by their psychic abilities or their usefulness to others. We believe every individual has value simply because they exist. The concept was so revolutionary to Nira that she felt dizzy. In Kalthari society, everything and everyone had a purpose that served the empire. Those who could not fulfill a useful role were discarded or forgotten. The idea that she might have value simply for being herself was impossible to believe. They reached her quarters, and Dr. Williams opened the door to reveal a space that made Nira gasp in surprise. The room was larger than her chambers back home had been, despite her royal status. There was a comfortable bed, a desk with writing materials, and best of all, a large window that looked out into the star field beyond the ship. This is for me? Nira asked in wonder. All yours, Dr. Williams confirmed. There's a communication panel by the door if you need anything. Meals are served in the common area, but we can bring food here if you prefer privacy. The choice is yours. After Dr. Williams left, Nira stood in the center of her new room, turning slowly to take in every detail. She had never been given choices before. In her father's palace, her meals, her clothing, even her daily schedule had been decided by others. The freedom to choose something as simple as where to eat felt overwhelming. A soft chime from the door interrupted her thoughts. When she activated the panel, Lieutenant Rodriguez's face appeared on the screen. Hi Nira, I hope I'm not bothering you. I was wondering if you'd like to join me for dinner in the common area. I thought you might like to meet some of the other crew members. Nira hesitated. Part of her wanted to hide in her room where it was safe and quiet. But another part, a part that had been buried under years of rejection and disappointment, was curious about these strange humans who treated her like she mattered. I would like that, she said finally. The common area was bustling with activity when they arrived. Crew members from at least 6 different species sat at tables together, sharing meals and conversation. Nira recognized some of the species from the council chamber, but here they seemed relaxed and happy instead of formal and distant. Nira, I'd like you to meet some of my friends, Rodriguez said, leading her to a table near the window. This is Engineer Park, our chief technician. Communications Officer Bell handles our diplomatic messages. And this is Dr. Santos, one of our medical team. Each human greeted Nira warmly, making genuine efforts to pronounce her name correctly and asking about her journey. No one stared at her or whispered about her lack of abilities. They simply treated her like any other person joining their table. So Nira, Engineer Park said between bites of his meal, Rodriguez mentioned you're interested in plants. That's fantastic. We have hydroponics gardens throughout the ship. Would you like to see them sometime? You grow plants on a spaceship? Nira asked, amazed. Of course, Dr. Santos replied. Fresh food tastes better than preserved rations, and plants help clean our air. Plus, gardening is relaxing. Many of our crew members spend their free time working in the gardens. I would very much like to see them, Nira said, and realized she meant it. For the first time in years, she felt excited about something. Over the following days, Nira found herself settling into a routine that would have been impossible in her old life. She woke when she chose to, ate what she wanted from the variety of foods available, and spent her time learning about the ship and its crew. Engineer Park had been true to his word and given her a comprehensive tour of the hydroponics gardens. The sight of so many different plants thriving in the artificial environment filled her with joy. Dr. Williams had also begun conducting tests to learn more about Nira's biology and potential abilities. Unlike the harsh examinations she had endured on Kalthari, these sessions felt more like conversations between friends. I'm still puzzled by your father's claim that you have no psychic abilities, Dr. Williams said during one of their sessions. Our scans show significant neural activity in regions associated with empathic sensitivity. It's possible that your gifts simply manifest differently than typical Kalthari powers. What do you mean? Nira asked. Well, Kalthari's psychic abilities focus on control and manipulation, reading thoughts, moving objects, influencing minds. But there are other types of psychic gifts. Some beings can sense emotions, heal mental trauma, or even communicate with non-sentient life forms. Dr. Williams pulled up a holographic display showing brain scans. Look at this pattern here. When we showed you images of distressed beings, your neural activity spiked dramatically. It's as if you were feeling their pain as your own. Nira studied the display thoughtfully. I have always been sensitive to the emotions of others. When someone near me is sad or afraid, I feel it too. But my tutors told me this was a weakness, not an ability. In human society, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others is considered one of the most valuable traits a person can have, Dr. Williams explained. We call it empathy, and it's essential for building relationships, solving conflicts, and creating communities where everyone can thrive. That evening, Nira was working in the hydroponics garden when she noticed one of the newer crew members sitting alone in a corner, looking miserable. Without thinking, she approached him. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I am Nira. You seem very sad. Is there anything I can do to help?" The young man looked up in surprise. He was human, probably around her age, with tired eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "I'm Tom. I just joined the crew last week. I guess I'm homesick." Nira sat down beside him. "Tell me about your home." For the next hour, Tom talked about the farming community where he had grown up, his family, and his fears about being so far from everything familiar. As he spoke, Nira found herself not just listening to his words but feeling his emotions as clearly as if they were her own. Without conscious thought, she began to project feelings of calm and comfort toward him. "You know what's strange?" Tom said as their conversation wound down. "I feel so much better now. It's like talking to you helped me remember all the good things about home instead of just missing what I left behind." After Tom left, Nira sat in the garden wondering what had happened. She had always been able to sense emotions, but this was the first time she had intentionally tried to influence how someone else felt. The experience left her both excited and frightened. The next morning, Dr. Williams requested an urgent meeting with Nira. When she arrived at the medical bay, she found Dr. Williams studying data displays with obvious excitement. "Nira, we detected some unusual energy patterns last night," Dr. Williams began. "They seemed to center around the hydroponics section. Do you remember anything unusual happening there?" Nira told her about the conversation with Tom and the strange sensation she had experienced while trying to comfort him. As she spoke, Dr. Williams's expression grew more and more amazed. "Nira, I think you may have just discovered your psychic gift," Dr. Williams said. "What you're describing sounds like emotional healing, the ability to absorb negative feelings and replace them with positive ones. It's an incredibly rare talent, and one that could help countless beings throughout the galaxy." "But how is that possible?" Nira asked. "I was tested so many times on Kalthari. They found nothing." "Because they were looking for the wrong things," Dr. Williams replied. "Kalthari tests are designed to detect aggressive psychic abilities, powers that can be used for conquest and control. Your gift is gentle and healing. Their methods would never have been able to detect it." Over the following weeks, Dr. Williams worked with Nira to understand and develop her newfound abilities. They discovered that she could not only sense and influence emotions but also help people process traumatic memories and overcome deep-seated fears. Her gentle touch could calm anxiety, her presence could ease depression, and her words could help others find hope in the darkest situations. Word of Nira's abilities spread quickly through the ship. Crew members began seeking her out, not as a curiosity or a burden but as someone who could genuinely help them. She worked with homesick recruits, veterans struggling with combat stress, and diplomats preparing for difficult negotiations. Each person she helped seemed to glow with renewed confidence and peace. Captain Torres, who had initially been skeptical about bringing an alien princess aboard his ship, became one of Nira's strongest supporters. "In 30 years of service, I've never seen anything like what you can do," he told her after she helped one of his officers overcome crippling stage fright. "You're not just healing individuals, you're making our entire crew stronger and more unified." Ambassador Chen also took notice of Nira's progress. During one of their regular conversations, he shared his own observations. "You've changed since coming aboard our ship," he told her. "When we first met, you seemed like someone who had given up hope. Now you carry yourself with confidence and purpose." "I feel different," Nira admitted. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I have something valuable to offer others. Your people have taught me that strength doesn't always mean power over others. Sometimes it means the ability to heal and help." "That's exactly the kind of thinking the galaxy needs more of," Chen replied. "I've been wondering if you might be interested in a more formal role with our diplomatic corps. We could use someone with your unique abilities and perspective." The offer thrilled and terrified Nira in equal measure. The idea of representing humanity to other species was both an incredible honor and a tremendous responsibility. But as she thought about all the beings in the galaxy who suffered under systems like the one she had escaped, she knew what her answer had to be. "I would be honored to serve," she said. "But I want to do more than just help individual people. I want to show other species that there's a different way to live, a way where everyone has value regardless of their abilities or status." Chen smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. I think you're going to change the galaxy in ways we can't even imagine yet." That night, Nira stood at the window in her quarters, looking out at the stars. Somewhere among them was Kalthari space, where her father ruled over a society that saw beings like her as worthless. But she was no longer the broken princess who had been offered as a desperate gift. She was someone with purpose, someone with the power to heal and help others find their own worth. Tomorrow they would reach Earth, and she would begin training for her new role as humanity's first alien ambassador. The thought filled her with excitement rather than fear. She had found her place in the universe, and it was far greater than anything her father could have ever imagined. 6 months had passed since Princess Nira first stepped aboard the human transport ship Unity. Now she stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching as Kalthari space came into view through the main screen. She wore the simple but elegant uniform of a human ambassador, her bearing transformed from the broken princess she had once been into someone who radiated quiet confidence and purpose. "Are you ready for this?" Ambassador Chen asked, joining her at the viewing screen. The familiar star systems of her childhood homeland looked both comforting and threatening at the same time. "I am ready," Nira replied, and she meant it. The months of training on Earth had prepared her not just as a diplomat but as someone who understood her true worth. Her empathic abilities had grown stronger with practice, and she had learned to help others in ways that seemed impossible before. Captain Torres approached from his command station. "Princess, we're receiving a communication from the Kalthari High Command. They're demanding to know why we've returned to their space without permission." "Put them through," Nira said calmly. "I will handle this." The main screen shifted to show General Korax, one of her father's former military commanders. His silver features twisted with surprise and anger when he recognized her. "Princess Nira. What is the meaning of this? You were given to the humans as payment for your father's life. You have no authority to return here." "General Korax," Nira replied, her voice steady and clear. "I return not as the princess you remember, but as Earth's official ambassador to the Kalthari people. I carry credentials from the human government and the Galactic Council." The general's 4 eyes widened in shock. "Impossible. Humans would never make someone like you an ambassador. You have no abilities, no status among our people." "You are correct that my status among our people was nothing," Nira agreed. "But I have learned that worth is not determined by psychic power or noble birth. I return to share this knowledge with others who have been cast aside as I was." Before the general could respond, alarms began sounding on his ship. "What is happening?" he demanded, turning to address someone off-screen. "Sir, "We're detecting massive psychic disturbances throughout the lower levels of the capital city," came a panicked voice. "It appears to be coming from the restricted districts where the powerless live." Nira exchanged a meaningful look with Chen. They had expected this. Word of her transformation had already spread through secret channels to other Kalthari who had been labeled as defective or worthless. The news that someone like them had found value and purpose among humans had sparked something that the ruling class had never anticipated. "General, I request permission to visit the capital," Nira said. "There are people there who need to hear what I have to say." "Absolutely not," General Korax replied. "You may have fooled the humans into thinking you have value, but you are still nothing here. I will not allow you to spread your poison among our people." "Then I will go to them anyway," Nira stated simply. "As an accredited ambassador, I have the right to meet with any citizens who request my presence. And I believe many of your people are very interested in meeting me." She was right. Over the following days, hundreds of Kalthari who had been deemed powerless began gathering in the restricted districts. They came from all corners of the empire, servants who had never developed telepathic abilities, workers whose psychic gifts were considered too weak to matter, and even some from noble families whose children had been hidden away in shame. Nira met with them in small groups, sharing her story and demonstrating the abilities she had discovered with human help. Her empathic healing powers worked just as well on Kalthari as they did on humans, perhaps even better since she understood their culture and the specific traumas they had endured. "I was told my entire life that I was broken," said Mira, a young Kalthari woman who had served as a kitchen worker in a noble house. "My family cast me out when my psychic tests showed nothing. But when you touch my mind, I feel something I never felt before. I feel like I matter." "You do matter," Nira assured her. "Every being has value beyond their abilities. The humans taught me that our worth comes from who we choose to be, not what we were born with." Word of these meetings reached the highest levels of Kalthari society, including the ears of King Zephan himself. Despite his exile, he still maintained contacts within the empire and was kept informed of major developments. The news that his discarded daughter had returned as a powerful figure filled him with conflicting emotions. She was supposed to disappear, he muttered to his aide as they watched news reports from their exile location. The humans were supposed to use her as a servant or curiosity. How did she become this? On the screen, they watched as Nira addressed a crowd of over 1,000 Kalthari in the capital's main square. Her voice carried clearly as she spoke about dignity, choice, and the right of every being to determine their own value. "The humans did not try to change me into something I was not," she was saying. "They helped me discover what I already was. They saw potential where my own people saw only failure." The crowd responded with enthusiasm that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. These were beings who had been taught to accept their low status without question, but Nira's words and presence gave them something they had never had before: hope. General Korax attempted to disperse the gathering using traditional psychic intimidation techniques, but something unprecedented happened. The crowd did not scatter in fear. Instead, they stood together, drawing strength from each other and from Nira's calming influence. "You have no power here," General Korax announced, his mental voice booming across the square. "You are the powerless, the worthless. Return to your places and cause no more trouble." "We are not powerless," came a unified response from the crowd. It was not one voice but hundreds, speaking together with a conviction that shook the general to his core. "We have worth. We have value. We will no longer accept your judgment of us." The demonstration marked a turning point in Kalthari society. For the first time in their recorded history, the powerless had organized and spoken as one voice. The ruling class found themselves facing something they had never encountered: organized resistance from those they had always dismissed. Ambassador Chen watched the developments with satisfaction. "This is exactly what we hoped would happen," he told Dr. Williams as they monitored the situation from the Harmony. "Nira isn't just healing individuals anymore. She's healing an entire society." But the most significant change was yet to come. 3 weeks after the demonstration, a small transport ship arrived at the human vessel. Its passenger was someone Nira had not expected to see, her father, former King Zephan. He looked older and more tired than when she had last seen him in the council chamber. The arrogance and pride that had once defined him seemed diminished, replaced by something that might have been regret. "I request permission to speak with my daughter," he said when he was brought aboard the Harmony. Nira agreed to the meeting, though she insisted that Ambassador Chen be present as a witness. They met in one of the ship's conference rooms, sitting across from each other at a simple table. "You have become something I never expected," Zephan began, his voice lacking the commanding tone she remembered. "When I gave you to the humans, I thought I was discarding a worthless burden. I never imagined you would become this." "What exactly have I become, father?" Nira asked, her own voice calm and composed. "A leader. Someone who matters. Someone who can change the fate of our entire civilization." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Someone valuable." Nira studied his face, using her empathic abilities to sense the genuine remorse and confusion he felt. "I was always valuable, father. You simply never learned how to see it." "The humans taught you this?" "The humans allowed me to discover it for myself," Nira corrected. "They created an environment where I could grow into who I was meant to be. That is their greatest gift, not their technology or their military strength, but their ability to see potential where others see only problems." Zephan was quiet for a long moment. "Half of my former empire is in revolt. The powerless are organizing into groups, demanding rights and recognition. My former generals tell me that traditional methods of control are failing because these beings no longer fear us." "Good," Nira said simply. "Good?" Zephan looked shocked. "The social order that has maintained peace for 1,000 years is crumbling." "It was not peace, father. It was oppression. True peace can only exist when all beings are valued and heard. What you are seeing now is not chaos, it is the birth of justice." Over the following months, the changes in Kalthari society accelerated. Inspired by Nira's example, other species throughout the galaxy began examining their own attitudes toward those they had previously dismissed. The Galactic Council established new committees to study discrimination and develop policies that would protect the rights of all beings regardless of their natural abilities. Dr. Williams published papers about Nira's unique empathic healing abilities, leading to the discovery that many other powerless beings across the galaxy possessed similar gifts that had never been recognized. Research centers were established to study these overlooked talents and help beings develop them. Perhaps most importantly, the human concept of individual worth began to spread throughout galactic civilization. Species that had maintained rigid caste systems for millennia started to question whether their traditional ways were truly just. King Zephan eventually requested asylum with the human government, not as a ruler seeking power but as someone hoping to learn from his mistakes. "I gave away the greatest treasure of my kingdom," he admitted to Nira during one of their final meetings. "I threw away something precious because I could not recognize its value." "You gave me the greatest gift possible," Nira replied. "You gave me the chance to become who I was meant to be. I cannot thank you for the years of pain and rejection, but I can thank you for making the choice that led me to find my true family among the humans." A year after her return to Kalthari space, Nira stood once again before the Galactic Council. This time, she was not being offered as a desperate bargain but speaking as Earth's ambassador to present a new treaty of cooperation and understanding. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the great chamber. "I stand before you as living proof that worth cannot be measured by power or status. Every being in our galaxy has value, every individual has something unique to offer, and every voice deserves to be heard." She looked out at the assembled delegates, many of whom she had worked with over the past year to address discrimination in their own societies. "The humans taught me that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its strongest members, but how it cares for those who are considered weak. They took what my own people saw as worthless and helped it become something that could change the galaxy." The treaty passed by unanimous vote, establishing new standards for individual rights throughout known space. As Nira left the chamber, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her from a discarded princess to a galactic advocate for justice. The humans had not just saved her life, they had shown her and countless others that every being deserves the chance to discover their true worth. In doing so, they had not only gained an ally but had demonstrated their greatest strength, the ability to find value where others see only waste, and to transform the discarded into the extraordinary. Behind her, the galaxy slowly began to change, one being at a time, as the human way of seeing worth beyond ability spread like ripples through the stars.